The criticism is there of the H-1B visa. It's misused. Cheap labour programme is what Donald Trump himself called it on the campaign trail. You've actually written in The Entrepreneur about this at length. And is it the case that it's being misused to a certain extent?
Yes. I think there's clear evidence that the minimum wage requirement under the H-1B at the moment, which is around $60,000 a year, is well below the average salary that software engineers, particularly in the Bay Area, particularly in the technology industry, would be earning at these companies. So there is a great business model here for the outsourcing companies. They can sponsor lots of these applications, bring people in on these wages, but this harms the Bay Area in particular because the odds of the companies out here being able to win a H-1B sponsorship go dramatically down.
And so, Michael, there's the argument to a certain extent that actually startups looking for talent are drowned out. They're not able to find the talent through H-1B visas. But your concern here is that if we lifted that minimum wage, we'll actually see a skyrocketing in the amount that are being paid at the moment and maybe pricing some companies out potentially?
Well, I think that if you're going to compare what a startup has to go through versus one of the big tech companies, you're going to see a very different look at the kind of people that they can hire. And as soon as you work to level this playing field, you're really going to see a big challenge ahead of us. And I think that, you know, overall, part of what's not being said in this conversation is this is not just about tech companies. The entire economy is filled with companies that are all technology companies. That may not be their core product, but they all need great tech talent. And if we throttle the pipeline that's bringing a lot of these people in, we're going to see wages for those people rise, and we're going to see a real shortage for companies that need that kind of high-skilled talent.
So, Harj, there's a case of throttling here being made by Michael, but you feel that there is a way of changing the H-1B visa that could work to everyone's advantage?
Yeah, so I think Michael had a couple of good points there. Like one, in terms of sort of startups and big companies, they obviously don't have the same financial resources, but if we look at the specific proposals that are being put out there, the minimum wage requirement being up to either $100,000 a year or $130,000 a year. At Triplebyte, we have a lot of accurate data on how much engineers in the technology industry are being paid, and that's well within the range that both startups and big companies are already paying their H-1B workers. So I don't think you'd see startups being disadvantaged when those are the minimum wage requirements put in place. The throttling and different industries is a fair point, and I think these are the kinds of issues that should be debated. I think the idea of a minimum wage requirement for the H-1B is valid, and adjusting that potentially by industry and carving out different requirements for different types of work is something that is worth discussing and exploring more.
Michael, it's interesting. I was reading 150,000 new jobs a year are created in tech. Well, do you really need 85,000 visas to help fill that? Is really the talent pool in the United States coming out of the universities so small that you need that 85,000 to fill the 150 places?
Sadly, it is. There's about, of that 150,000, there's a shortage of about 110,000 a year. We're seeing and going to continue to see until our country makes it a priority to educate people differently, starting in grammar school, middle school, and high school, that we're going to continue to fall short on this. And I just want to say I really agree with what Harj is saying about a minimum. There's no downside to that. That ensures that the jobs are going to the highly qualified people, and it's not taking away a job that could be done from someone here. So I just wanted to add that I agree with that point wholeheartedly.
So it sounds like both Michael and yourself, Harj, are really talking about the need for this to be debated, not suddenly rushed through in any particular way. We need people at the table discussing this with Donald Trump and indeed the Congress and the Senate. But what about your client's response thus far? Not only to that, but the Trump travel ban as well. Are we starting to see people fearing to come and find jobs in the US?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, at Triplebyte, we absolutely are. So we get applications from engineers across the world, specifically from ones that have special visa arrangements with the US. So Australia, Canada are both examples of countries where they have visas that make it easier to get into the US to work. And we are already seeing candidates begin to pause their job search. So these are countries not affected by the travel ban, but they are worried about moving here while there's so much uncertainty.
Michael, same question to you. Are you seeing a concern from people looking for jobs within the US, and indeed your clients? Are they looking to hire outside of the United States? Maybe we'll see more offshoots of Microsoft, for example, in Canada because they can't get the talent here in the US?
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely seeing this and have a situation right now where somebody's trying to rush through a visa for fear that it's not gonna be available in a few months, and that is somebody coming from a non-banned country. I think that there's fear and panic sort of going around everywhere, and I think that if we don't come up with a better way to approach this, we're going to see industry-wide and economy-wide problems when we don't have enough people and people are no longer choosing to come here to innovate. I mean, there's a story floating around now about a gentleman from India who could not get a visa and ended up forming what is now a $7 billion company in India because he couldn't do it here. Of course, there are a lot of factors that might have been different had he tried to do it here, but do we really want to drive those kinds of businesses and those kinds of entrepreneurs from our shores? I think we really have to look at this very closely because innovation hubs are popping up around the world and people will go where the talent is.